Hey, sweet friends, it's Barbara, and welcome back to my channel. Let's make some beautiful high-end Christmas decor using mostly items from Dollar Tree and Walmart. Now, a sweet subscriber of mine, Karen, sent this inspiration photo over to me, so let's see if we can recreate this. Starting off with one of Dollar Tree's wood truck signs, I'm going to take my utility knife and score it a few times to cut those pumpkins off the back. Now, as I was doing that, it did loosen up those wood slats, which worked out perfect. I just took my Cricut spatula and kind of went underneath that so that I was able to remove it without breaking it. Now, once I scored it on one side, I just flip it over and score it again, and it will pop off nice and evenly. And then I'm going to trim some of that up to get a nice even edge. I'm taking some spackling to fill in the hole at the top where the hanger was, and I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll sand that down. Using some of Waverly's Crimson Chalk Paint, which is a gorgeous red. I'm going to apply 2 coats to this, and I am painting everything except for the bumper at the back and in the front, and then one little piece down at the bottom where you would normally have like a side step. And I'm also not going to paint the wheels or the center caps in this red. But I did make sure I get those outside edges too, just in case you could see them. For the wood slats that go on the back of the truck, I'm using some antique wax made by Waverly, and I'm just going to paint that on with my paintbrush and then take a dry paper towel and go over it and blend that in nice and smooth. For the tires, I'm going to carefully take some of my black chalk paint and paint around everything except for those center caps. And also make sure that you get underneath it to get the coloring on the bottom part of the tire as well. I'll do that for both tires. And then I'm going to take a soft bristled brush, a dry brush, and dab it into my black chalk paint and then wipe most of it off on a dry paper towel so that I can create some shadowing by dry brushing around the fenders, on the outside and the inside of the fenders. And this is creating some shadowing to give it more of a rustic and a 3D dimensional look. I'm also going to add it to the top part of the hood and then around the windows and the doors, basically almost all the way around this piece, just kind of shadowing everything in. Now, as I held my wood slats up, I realized I needed to cut a little bit more off at the top, but I'm going to do that once I get done dry brushing my black on. So where those wood slats would come down at the bottom, I'm going to dry brush a line across there so I'll know where to stop when I get ready to paint that at the top. I also went around the door and then created a line where the door would normally have that opening where the hinges are. Now, I lined my wood slats back up so I would know exactly how much I needed to go back in and trim off. And again, I'm just going to use my utility knife and score it a couple of times, and then it will pop off very easily. Once I have that shaped up, I'm going to take my black chalk paint and I'm going to paint that section right at the top where we just cut off all the way down to my shadowing in one coat of that black paint. For the center part of the wheel, I am using Folk Arts Color Brushed Silver. This is like a metallic type paint that Folk Art makes that you can sometimes find at Walmart, but I will have it listed in my Amazon store in my description box if you are interested in this. So I'm going to paint the front and the back bumper as well as that side step in this brushed silver color. And then I went around the handle and a little bit around those windows just to give it more of a 3D effect. Now, once all of the paint dries, I'm going to reattach those wood slats to the back of the truck just using some hot glue on that bottom rail, line everything up, and then we can set this to the side for just a minute. I'm going to be using one of these 12-inch bamboo wreaths from Dollar Tree. Now, they're not perfectly circular, so mine had more of like a flat shape at the bottom, which worked out perfect, so that's where I decided to place the truck. So I held it in place to figure out exactly where I wanted it to line up on my wreath, and then I flipped that over, and I'm taking some floral wire and then feeding that into the spots where I'm going to be attaching it to the wreath. So I just used the wreath as a guide and then I took some hot glue and put a really nice generous amount, and I'm taking some scrap ribbon to put over that hot glue to give it a nice secure hold to hold my floral wire in place, and then cut the excess ribbon off. Then I could take the wreath and line it back up on the truck and make sure I have it in the position that I want it to be in, and I can secure that in place by twisting that floral wire very tightly around the back on each side and cutting the excess off. And then I like to tuck it down into the bamboo wreath so it doesn't scratch my door or anything. Now, once we have that in place, we can flip it over, and I'm going to decorate the top using some of Walmart's lamb's ear. Now, these came 2 little bundles a piece, and so I'm going to use 4 of them, and I'm going to overlap them on the ends. So you'll have 2 on each side, but the ones on the bottom will stick out a little bit longer. So I just held it up there and kind of bend it around to create a shape. And then I'm going to take them one by one and bend them individually to be able to line them up at the top of the wreath. Now, the 2 that go in a little bit closer, I will cut the ends down so that they don't stick up so far. So once I had those somewhat in place, I just took that little tie that came off of the end of it to hold it in place. I thought maybe it would be long enough to tie it around the wreath, but it wasn't. But it did hold it in place until I was able to cut a nice long length of floral wire off and wrap that around really tightly to get it nice and secured around those lamb's ear ends. And then you're just going to want to work with it and make sure you bend it around to the shape of your wreath. Now I'm going to use 2 of these beautiful, very dark red berry picks from Walmart. And I'm going to place 1 on each side and do that the same way by bending those ends and then kind of tucking them underneath the leaves of the lamb's ear. And once I have those in place, I'm going to hold them together using the floral wire that I already had on the lamb's ear. Now, none of this was attached yet to the wreath. So I'm going to take an extra piece of floral wire and wrap that around in the center very tightly to secure that to our bamboo wreath. Again, I'm going to make sure I cut that excess off and tuck it down because you don't want that to scratch your door when you hang it up. I then went in and added 2 more pieces of floral wire off of the center to make sure that everything was nice and snug and secured on there. Now, to create a hanger, I'm going to take just a length of jute rope, tie a knot at the end, and then I'll cut that excess off of the knot. And then I'm just going to feed that underneath the wreath, take the bottom piece and overlap it, and then pull the piece that was that we tucked underneath the wreath to create the hanger. And then I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue to hold that in place so it'll hold it to the back part of the wreath form, so when we hang it up, it will sit nice and flat on your door. Now I'm using some gray burlap ribbon. I believe this came from Dollar General last year, but I'm going to cut down 12-inch lengths, and I started off by cutting 4 of the gray burlap ribbon, and then I am using this beautiful buffalo check ribbon. Now I have this listed in my Amazon store. I bought this. It is actually 50 yards, so you get 50 yards of that for $11, which I think is a great deal. So I cut 6 of those down, and they were a little bit longer than 12 inches, maybe 14 inches. And I'm going to fold that down to create a loop. So I'm not measuring my loops, but I'm folding it down maybe less than half of the way. You're going to pinch it in the middle where you folded your loop down, and then hold it in your hand, and you're kind of facing all of your ribbon together to create a cute bow. And then you'll take the larger burlap gray ribbon, and I'm going to do the same thing by folding it down into a loop, pinching it together, and then I'm going to place 1 on each side and holding it all together with one hand where all those loops meet. Now, once I had those 4 gray on there, I decided I needed a little bit more, so I do cut down 2 more lengths, and I did cut these longer than 12 inches so that they would have longer tails. So once I cut those 2 down, I'm going to create the same size loop that I did with the other gray ribbon, pinch it together in the middle, and I'll put one on each side to have a very nice long tail. Then I'm going to take a chenille stem, wrap it around where you're holding all of those loops together, where you pinched them and you were holding them. You're going to twist that around really, really tightly. Make sure everything is secured and held in there with that chenille stem. Then you can fluff your bow out and dovetail each end of each of the ribbons. So I kind of cut the buffalo check where some of it was shorter, so the gray was longer behind it, and then some of it, the gray was shorter than the buffalo check. So you could just kind of play around with it and see what looks nice. Then I'm going to take it and attach the top part of the wreath using the chenille stem that was holding all of it together. Again, I'm going to cut that down and tuck it, and then you're going to want to fluff your bow out and position your tails. And now you have a beautiful wreath with less than $10 in it. You guys, let me know how I did in reference to the inspiration photo, and let me know if you enjoyed project number 1. Okay, let's get started on project number 2. I found these really beautiful napkins at Family Dollar for $1.50, and they have that really cute red truck on there with the Christmas tree in the back. And you're only going to need one napkin, so you're going to cut it down in half, and it has 2 of the truck images, one on each end. You'll peel that top layer of the napkin off, and you're going to want to do that for the other one as well. We're also going to be using one of these Dollar Tree mason jar candle holders that holds the votive candle. Cut your napkin down as close to the truck as possible. You will have a little bit of white edging on the outside. You're going to do that for the other truck image as well, so you'll have 2 of these truck images. And I found that it was going to be easier if I put the lid back on the candle jar, just to make sure that I didn't glue anything up above that rim. Now, to attach the napkin, I'm going to use some Mod Podge. So there's 2 different ways I'll show you how I do this to attach it. I line the napkin up and then apply the Mod Podge straight to the glass jar, and then press my napkin down and go over it with the Mod Podge around the edging and kind of pushing the air bubbles out as I go and putting a layer of Mod Podge on the top. And then I could go to the other half and apply the Mod Podge to the jar again, and then apply some more on the top of that. Then you're going to want to let that dry before you apply your second image on the opposite side. So here's a second way you can do that, is you can just put the Mod Podge straight on the jar and get a nice good coverage amount of the size of your napkin, and then you can place your napkin directly onto the Mod Podge and then press it down nice and firm, but you don't want to be too firm and rip your napkin. And then you can go back over it with the Mod Podge and push the air bubbles out with the paintbrush as you are applying the Mod Podge to the top. Now, once it dries, you're going to have some sections on each side that you can see through. And I wanted to blend the image in with the mason jar. So I'm going to use some faux snow that I had left over from last year from Dollar Tree. It's really, really pretty, and it has some pretty little sparkles and glitters. So I'm very carefully applying the Mod Podge to the edge of the napkin, just so that we can apply the snow directly up to the edge of the napkin, but not on the napkin. So you're going to want to go around the entire edge of each of the napkins with the Mod Podge, and then apply your faux snow, and then you can shake the excess off. So I'm doing this in sections at a time, so that I don't, the Mod Podge won't dry up before I apply the faux snow. So I'll just go around and do the other side of that napkin and that space in between the 2 napkins, and then add the snow. And then as you are finished adding the snow, you just want to shake a little bit to get some of that excess off. And you'll continue to do this around the entire mason jar until you have all of those spaces at the bottom and around each one of the napkins filled in with the faux snow. Not only is it blending in the napkin with the jar, it's really giving it a nice high-end, elegant look. Now, once the Mod Podge completely dried, I'm taking a dry paintbrush and gently going over the faux snow to get any of the excess off that didn't attach, so that when you pick it up, it doesn't come off in your hands. Then you can reinsert your top, and I'm going to use one of the battery-operated votive lights, And I think this piece turned out so pretty. These would make great inexpensive gifts. And I just love the way this project turned out. You guys let me know what you think of project number 2. And if you're wondering about that cute metal red truck, my son gave me that for my birthday recently. It is a Christmas ornament, and I believe it came from Walmart. For project number 3, we are going to be using this absolutely adorable sign from Dollar Tree. It is so cute, just the way it is. We're going to use the back side of this, remove the hanger, and then I'm going to take my Waverly White chalk paint and give this 2 nice coats, allowing it to dry in between each coat, and also making sure that I get those outside edges. Now, while that is drying, I'm going to be using one of these wood nativity scenes from Family Dollar for $1. This is so cute. Now, we don't need the piece that it sits in because this is a sign that you can actually set up. I'm going to paint all of those pieces with some black chalk paint. Again, making sure you get those outside edges because you will be able to see those. Now, once that dries, I wanted to lay it out on my sign, and my sign just wasn't big enough to be able to fit the 3 wise men in, because on the original sign, you're able to put it into those slats and have them in different sections. But since these were going to be overlapping each other, I just didn't have the room for them. So I originally was going to place some hot glue and glue baby Jesus right there at the bottom of Mary and Joseph, and then attach the manger part of the scene over top. But then once I glued everything together, it wasn't sitting flush on there. So I do end up taking it apart and then removing all of that glue, and then I can actually put it back together so that everything will sit flush. I just needed everything to sit flat so that when I put it on the sign, I'll be able to glue it down securely, but it will still have that 3D effect when we apply it to the sign. So I found that it was easier to just align each of the pieces up and hot glue them down, so they're mostly glued to the base at the bottom. And since I pulled some of that paint up when I pulled these pieces apart, I do have to go in and touch that up with my black chalk paint. And while I was doing that, I decided to go ahead and paint the back side. Since this is a bit of a 3D piece, I wanted to make sure that if you could see the back side of some of this, that it would be painted and it wouldn't be looking like it was unfinished. So once I have all of that done, I'm going to set it to the side and let it dry. And I'm using some of that same 1.5 inch buffalo check ribbon. And I originally started off cutting 4 of the 14.5 inch pieces, but I do end up using 6 of those. And then I'm using some 2.5 inch wired red ribbon from Dollar General, I believe. And I cut 4 of those down to 14.5 inches. So we're going to create a bow just like we did in project number 1 by creating loops and then squeezing them together and then holding them all together in one spot with your hand. And then I'm going to take those red ribbons and apply those to the outside edges. So it'll be 6 of the buffalo check in the middle and 4 of the red on the outside. Now for this one, I am actually going to attach that using a zip tie right where all of those loops meet, and pull that really tightly, cut that excess off, and then you're going to want to fluff your bow out, pull all your loops out, and straighten everything up. And I'm going to make this one pretty much flat, so I'm going to pull those excess pieces out to the side. So I ended up cutting 2 of the buffalo check flush where the zip tie is, so that I would have the same amount of tails in the red and the buffalo check. And I'm going to dovetail each one of those ends. So I wanted the buffalo check to kind of overlap the top of the red ribbon. And then I'll spread those out to the side, so you'll have like 4 ribbons spread out to the side. To create a hanger for our sign, I'm using some jute rope, just like we did in project number 1. I'm going to double knot it and then cut the excess off. And then I'm just going to twist it and give it like double strength just by creating the 2 loops together, so it'll be double of the rope. Feed it in through the sign and then pull what you pulled through from the front, overlap it to the back, and then pull that nice and tight. I hope that makes sense, you guys. So once you have that in place, you have a really pretty hanger. We can attach our bow right at the top of this ornament sign, so you're still going to have that nice full roundness of the sign. So mostly your bow is glued to the top where the ornament piece would be. Then we're going to hot glue our nativity scene down. Now, on my Cricut, I created this decal, Christ the Savior is Born. If you have a Cricut, I use the font Dom Casual. If you do not have a Cricut, I have this as a free printable on my website, which is in my description box below. So you can go over there, download it, print it on regular paper, and then trace it onto your project. So as I was placing this on there, I found that it was easier for me to cut it down to the circular shape so that I would be able to line it up better when I placed it on my sign. So once I've removed my backing from my decal, I can then use my little Cricut burnishing tool and make sure I have all my lettering down and remove my transfer tape. And you have a beautiful sign. I absolutely love how this one turned out. I love that buffalo check and the red ribbon and the 3D effect of the nativity scene. And I just can't wait to hang this up for Christmas this year. If you're enjoying today's video and you haven't done so already, I would love for you to click that subscribe button and the notification bell and visit me on my other social media accounts. All the links are in my description box below. Now let's get started on project number 4. We are using this glass jar from Dollar Tree. Remove the top, we only need the base. Now this has the flat side on the front and the back. And I'm going to give this 2 even coats of Waverly's chalk paint in the color Plaster, which is just like an off-white color. I did paint this entire jar, including that top rim and inside that rim just a little bit and the bottom. Now to seal this chalk paint, I'm going to use some Mod Podge and put a nice even coat on there. This is just going to protect it from chipping off of that glass. Allow that to completely dry. And I'm going to use some of these pop stickers from Dollar Tree, and I'm painting 4 of them in some black chalk paint. So once that paint dries, I'm going to peel it off of the backing and just kind of take my finger and go around it to get any of the rough edges off to make sure they're nice and smooth. I'm using some 1.5 inch buffalo check wired ribbon, and I'm going to determine how long I need it to be to go around the rim of the jar, and I'm going to fold that in half and hot glue it at the seam in the back all the way across, and then I'll hot glue it in the front to give it a nice good seal so that I can use this to wrap around the rim of the jar. So I will just put a little bit of hot glue from the bottom of the rim all the way to the top and hold that in place. And then I'm going to add some hot glue at the top of the rim and the bottom and do this all the way around until the ribbon goes all the way around the rim. Now a little bit of that ribbon will stick up from the jar, and you want that so it'll have a nice seamless look when we add our snowman's head on there. The head is an actual ornament from Walmart. It was $1.98, and it is absolutely adorable with this buffalo check hat on there. So I removed the hanger and then just kind of ran my finger over that to close any holes up where the hanger is. Made sure that I aligned it, so I want his face to be on one of the flat parts of the jar, and I'm going to put a nice good amount of hot glue on that rim at the top and hold it in place with just a little bit of a tilt so the back of his hat almost touches that buffalo check on the rim. Then I'm using some of Dollar Tree's greenery. It has greenery with glitter and these little white balls. And then one of the mini tiny pine cones off of one of Dollar Tree's picks. I'm going to cut the greenery stems down so that I can make sure that they'll fit properly on the side of the snowman. And I'm going to overlap the ends and kind of bend that around and attach the two together using some jute rope. So I'm going to wrap that all the way around on both sides and then tie it off in a knot and cut my excess rope off. Then I'm going to take that same buffalo check ribbon and create a simple bow just by folding it over on one side and then folding the other side over, pinching the middle together, and then I can take a piece of jute rope to tie around the center of the bow to hold it in place. And I'll double knot that and cut that excess rope off. Now I did end up making my loops a little too big, so I pulled them back through to make those a little bit smaller so it wouldn't be too overwhelming when I add it to the snowman. I also dovetailed the ends of the tails on the bow, and then I'm going to hot glue that bow right to that jute rope that we just attached the two greenery pieces together with. Then I'm going to attach it right on the side of the snowman, but I'm going to add the glue to the actual buffalo check ribbon on the rim so it'll get a nice good hold. And I made sure I pulled his earmuff up so it wouldn't be in the way, and then you can adjust everything once your glue sets. I added a very generous amount of glue right in the center so we can add that tiny pine cone. Well, it's not really super tiny, but it's one of these smaller pine cones. And then we can add our painted pop dots on there. Now, originally I was just going to line them up and then add some hot glue underneath, but they held pretty well. And I am going over it with Mod Podge to seal that chalk paint in so it doesn't chip off. And I think this turned out so beautiful. I love this snowman. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I hope you guys like it too. If you have a favorite out of today's video, I would love to know. Let me know in the comments down below. I truly do appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to watch my videos. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.